Hey, welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. My name is Kristin Hill, and we are so excited that you're tuning in today. Our prayer is that you would move one step closer to Jesus through this series. So go ahead and check out this next episode. Welcome back to the Strong Roots podcast. I'm here with John again, and we are talking. Hi. We're talking about being angry with God today. You feel ready?
Ooh, that's a big topic. But yeah, I feel ready, Kristin.
Okay, so in your life, what has made you the most angry at God?
This was a tough week because I feel like my primary anger is more at people who claim to follow God than at God. Because I feel like that's a common, people will say I'm angry at God because they feel like his people are him, but they are imperfect representations of him.
Right.
And I would say that most people who are angry at God for some reason or another, sometimes it's because of a tragedy that's happened in their life. But most of the time, somebody's angry at God, it's because somebody who was an imperfect manifestation of God said or did something that was disappointing. And in my life, that's definitely been the case. Like there have been people that I respected or in positions of leadership that have made choices that I think are really contrary to good. Right. In my life, in the world's eyes, and in God's eyes. And I found it really hurtful. And it's made me angry. And at times in my life, I've even been angry at God for allowing that to happen. So, yeah.
What do you do when you're angry at God or angry at Christians?
It has been morning by morning forgiveness. Like I say, Jesus, I choose to forgive this person for what they've done. And, so often in my life, if I'm really frustrated with somebody, I'm going to go to them and I'm going to lovingly say, here is what I think the conflict is, and here is my role in it. Will you forgive me for my role? And I just find that when I ask for forgiveness for whatever my role is, and if the pie chart of fault is 99% their fault and 1% mine, I'm going to focus on that 1% because that's the only thing I have control of.
Right.
And a lot of times I'll find that they'll own part or all of their role, and that's awesome. And even if they don't, a lot of times I feel a lot better because it's like, I swept my side of the street clean and, I've confronted them in a godly way, and then I'll just continue to pray for them. Sometimes it frustrates me because I see that representation of God's image continue to hurt other people. And obviously someday, they're going to stand before God and in the same way that I was angry that it was happening, like I feel they're going to have to deal with the consequences of their choices, from a holy and righteous God.
Right. So, twofold question. Is it wrong to be angry at God? And is it wrong to be angry with people?
The Bible is replete with examples of people who I would say are frustrated with God. And I think that's a normal human deal. David was a man after God's own heart, and yet there are times in the Bible where it seems very clear he feels frustration towards God for moments. He is definitely he is an emotional roller coaster. He's an extreme personality for sure. And there's a lot of people I can think of, some of which have been on this podcast, who have David's heart, and they're people after God's heart. And I think that's great. But no, I don't think it's wrong to be frustrated with God at different times in our life. I think that's part of a relationship that you have with somebody. I certainly think there are times where God looks at us and is like, oh, I wish they'd make better choices. I wish they would because I love them and whatever, so. Yeah.
So now you're saying it's okay to be angry at people sometimes too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's okay to be angry at people because like this morning, our son, had some choice words for you, and it wasn't really his words because he's 4, he doesn't have that many words, but it was the tone behind the words that made me really frustrated because he said them to you, and I love you. And I think in the same way, when people act in a way that I think really is not honoring the God that I love, I'm not going to hate them or anything, but I'll be angry at them, like, man, especially when they know better, like, oh man, I don't like that.
Right.
So
why is it so important that we deal with our anger towards God and towards people?
Oh man, I think even when I was angry at our son, it hurt our relationship. Like I just was not the person that I wanted to be in that moment. And I think so often anger is a unique emotion and that it removes you from the present. You know, and even if you're angry in the present at something in the present, it removes you from the present, and it replaces you with somebody that you don't want to be, and you often are not.
Right.
You know, a different version of yourself you don't want to be. And I think angry people, there was a movie once that was like with Adam Sandler, and I don't remember what it was called, but he had this remote that he could like fast forward through his life in. And I feel like angry people, essentially, like anger is emotion that causes you to just overpower everything and sort of skip the moment. And I think there's a lot of people who constantly live angry, and it's like they're living their life on fast forward. They're not actually in relationship with God. They're not in relationship with people. They're just angry, and they're like turning off the sound and fast forwarding through everything, you know, raging through it. And I don't think that's the way that God created us to live on a long-term level. You know, anger is an emotion that God gave us to cope with things. There are examples of God being angry in the Bible, or particularly Jesus being angry in the Bible. So again, I don't think it's wrong, but as a state of existence, I don't think it's healthy. And so that's why we should deal with it.
Absolutely. So if someone you love is angry with God, what would you encourage them to do?
I think, you know, my favorite song is Great Is Thy Faithfulness, that old hymn, and there's a part of it that says, morning by morning, new mercies I see. And I think it's just reminding us of how every morning we see how God has forgiven us for our mistakes. And when you're angry at God or angry at people, for a lot of times, you know, like you just have to give them grace every morning. Like, Jesus, I choose to forgive, in your case, you know, I choose to forgive my incredibly handsome husband for the mistakes that he's made morning after morning, you know, and I know you do, you know, when I make mistakes, and I do the same for you, and you know, when I'm mad at God, it's like, you know, God, I choose to release my anger towards you, and I choose faithfulness in this moment in the same way that you have given me mercy. Like, I want to give that to you, you know, and I know we don't, like, God is not deserving of judgment, so we're not giving him mercy, but we're giving him reprieve from our anger.
Right, and because who should the blame really be on? Ourselves and on Satan.
On Satan and on sin, yeah. Yes. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So what have you learned about God while being angry at him?
I mean, I think some of the greatest periods of spiritual growth have come from times when I'm trying to deal with my frustration and not understanding of God in my life. And I think so often, rather than, you know, leaving the remote on fast forward, when you say, okay, I need to get to the bottom of this, what do we do? We replay it in slow motion. You know, we start playing life on slow motion. We start actually living intentionally every moment and wringing the most out of every single moment that we can. And I think what I've learned about God has been, through the hardship in my life that I'm frustrated at him for, is often when he is most present and when my relationship with him grows the most, for sure.
I would agree. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering these questions.
Thanks for asking him.
Yeah, I learned so much. And thank you guys for tuning in. We cannot wait to catch you next time. We're going to be talking about where to turn when things get dark. So we'll see you then. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. We don't want you to miss out on any future content. Thank you so much again, guys. I hope you have a great day. And I want you to know I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.